Good evening, everyone. It's 5 o'clock. Welcome to the special board meeting of the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District. It's 5 p.m. Emily, do you want to do a roll call? Or I can do it here from here. So
Okay.
So we'll do a roll call. Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Loth,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz here, Manager Taves. Absent, Manager Baki. Absent, so we have.
Your case is there,
Is Manager Taves here or?
he just text there, here,
Oh, okay. Manager Taves,
you can hear, but not.
okay, so Manager Taves is here then also.
Emily, can you please check to see if you can unmute, Manager Taves, please?
I can ask to unmute, and I've done so.
Oh, okay. All right, I wasn't sure if we still some of that control of getting in, but, okay, thank you.
So the first item on the business today is, call to order, I'm sorry, 2023 year-end general fund transfer. Manager Anderson, did you or Mike or either of you wants to make comments on that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Treasurer.
yeah, I can. We talked with our CPA at Redpath about ending the year with either negative or a zero balance. And the CPA recommended against that and recommended that we have, you know, we probably couldn't do the amount for 6 months of coverage, of course, for staff and overhead expenses, but some reasonable amount. I suggested 100,000, and he said, try not to have a round number like that. So I said 105. And so that's what he and I agreed with. It was actually his recommendation. I agreed with that. And then that went to Justin Nielsen at our Abdo audit company. And he made the transfer with Mike's direction.
Okay. So everybody's agreed to that. So I'll make a motion then to move to amend the 2023 general fund to 105,000 and then transfer $368,998 from the program and project implementation budget to the general fund. Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Manager Anderson. Is there any other discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Taves, Manager Loth,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz, aye. Okay, motion carries then. Thank you.
Manager Taves voted aye in the chat.
There, I finally got in.
So you're back on now, Doug?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That'll make it a little easier. Okay, so that's been passed. Then moving on to the next. So we have two items on the agenda this evening. One is the year-end annual reports that we want to take some comments from Manager Anderson to discuss, and I'll mention that. Then we have the main purpose of the meeting was the administrator's discussion planning, which we'll get to there in a minute. So just some background on the Manager Anderson's comments. We have a number of extensive comments. I'm not sure everybody got my note that I sent out. So given the time limitations, et cetera, to go through all that, Manager Kinney and myself decided that I would go through and pick out the comments that I thought were the most relevant to key issues for clarity and or accuracy. And so I ended up with 3 pages of notes, although Manager Anderson had comments on all 38 pages. So even though I have a lot of comments, it's still less than what Manager Anderson had suggested. And I think most of her comments were mainly grammatical and writing comments, and the ones that weren't, I made a point of trying to include here. So we have several attachments. We have Manager Anderson's comments on the annual report. We have my comments to her comments and recommending what we include in the red line. And then the red line report is what Emily took from the comments that I took from Manager Anderson's comments to include in the red line report. So in view of time, I would like just to ask anybody else if they have any other suggestions on maybe some of Manager Anderson's comments that weren't included. We could discuss those, or Manager Anderson, if you have 2 or 3 things that you think are critical that should be in there that I didn't include, we'd be happy to review those. We still have Thursday night to have any other comments, short comments, before we actually we'll approve it on Thursday night, correct? Like,
That's the plan and the intent, so we can meet the state statutory requirement.
Emily, when I went through the red lines, I saw one thing that I didn't write you about, but on, I think, it's, Supervisor Beth was listed on there, and I think Manager Anderson recommended that we just delete the phone numbers and the emails, so nobody would try to contact her. Is that correct, Manager Anderson?
That's what I recommended.
But I think you deleted her whole name and everything. I'm not sure that was your intention, Manager Anderson, or was it?
No, it wasn't my intention, but, because we have the other 2 that aren't with us
Right.
anymore in the photograph. So it was just to take out the contact info.
Okay, so that's the only thing I suggest that we maybe keep in, Emily. So if you would just make that note.
I think there was a footnote on that page that said that she was no longer with us or something to that effect.
Correct.
Yeah, I just saw your email this afternoon. I haven't had a chance to look through this, but I'm not gonna delay this any longer.
Well,
I don't want to. I think that, the district's gonna do what the district's gonna do, and we don't need to belabor it. But one of the things that really troubled me was the, reference to the hours of the employees. It's really detailed on, forget what page now it is. Maybe Emily knows. But anyway, that
Page 8.
calculation, I'm sorry,
There's a
What page?
reference on there's a reference on page 8 to begin with.
no, this is the breakdown. Is that the one? Yeah, here it is. That's right. Thank you, Doug. That troubled me that we had the detail in there because a normal work year is 2,080 hours. And that includes vacations and all of that, of course, because you're paying for them, as an employer. But that troubled me because that gives us a really low number for employees' work time. And I think that needs to be explained because anybody interested enough to read the details of this report is gonna notice that it's 1,800 hours. I believe is what you had for employees average. And that's quite a bit different from the 2,080 that's normal. That's 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. And so that includes, like I said, vacation, paid time and so on.
Right, so that's the actual hours worked.
Yeah,
So we're kind of broadly making that assumption using your PTO and holidays.
But all I see on here is 18,000 hours. Is that what we're talking about?
I'm looking at the box,
The what?
second box, comment 2.
Oh,
Standard working year is estimated at 1,800 hours, 52 weeks times 40 is 2,080. This is my comment. Then subtract 13 holidays and 21 PTO days. All employees start with 21. Oh, this must be a comment.
yeah, that's a comment.
Yes.
It's not in,
With
it's not in the
21 days.
report.
Yeah, well, that wasn't my comment. That's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
is that this must be an explanation for what's
yes.
in the report.
We dropped the comment on employee turnover.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think we need to talk about that. The other one would be that, I don't think that's in, I don't think that none of those numbers are in the red line report though. Manager Anderson, those are just comments. Is that correct, Emily?
That's correct. The comment is just the explanation.
Right. So I don't think we have an issue then, unless I'm missing something.
Okay, so the whole thing was taken out, is that what you're saying?
I don't think it was ever in
Oh,
there, was
actual
it?
working,
It's
okay.
never in there.
Yeah, it was, but maybe I calculated it off of that 18,000. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what it was. Okay.
Okay,
We're in this period when people are asking, why do we need a building? Why do we need to go beyond what we have, a footprint beyond what we have? And we're also at, not quite there yet, but we're at a point getting closer to where we're not going to have as many capital projects.
right,
We're going to be switching to education and maintenance and some of the smaller projects that we put aside so that we could concentrate on the big pollutant sources. And so those will be there, throughout. But what that does to staffing and the need for more staffing is not really fully brought out yet, but keep in mind that people who do read these are part of the public that is concerned about government and concerned about the watershed. And so things have to be very, very clear
right.
and transparent. So that was my concern. My other big one, and the rest are sort of minor as far as I'm concerned, but this presentation looks better. Now is this shrunk down, Emily?
Well, this is the
Why-
Word document format, not the,
Okay,
not the other one,
doesn't
so
have
it's
the
not,
line.
doesn't have the
The
glitz on it.
photos aren't there and all
Right,
that. Okay, I
right.
see those notes. Is the budget information. And that really troubled me because it didn't seem to tie out. I think you had made that comment as well.
We worked on that, it was simply an addition error,
Okay,
so we figured that out.
all right. So
What
those-
we have table 8 was the budget as the grant budget, I mean, the income
Mhm.
budget revenue budget that we had last September, when that chart was put together for the budget. And then there was an updated chart on the next page, which showed all the new grants that had come in and how that had changed.
Mhm.
So we were about like $2 million higher, I think. So,
Yeah.
okay. That's why it didn't tie it out, because it was 2 different time periods.
Yeah, and I was concerned about the grants not being captured as revenue when they were actually starting to be utilized. So we get them, we get portions of it, it sits in the capital checking account, savings account to gather interest. But when we add it to the budget and the project starts, I thought that's when all the transfers occur. So we had grant dollars that weren't captured as revenue. That might be what you're talking about as the mistake, because our revenue was higher.
Well, it wasn't a
End of the
mistake,
year.
it's just at a different time. This was
Yeah.
in now March instead of last September. And so since that time, as you mentioned, a lot of the grants,
Mhm.
and Emily should speak to this more than I can, but basically hearing her talk about it, those would roll into the budget then because they became active. Is that correct, Emily? In terms of
Yes.
how okay. So anyway, we have a chance to look at this one more time, and then if there's anything else, manager, Ennis, or you, I put a lot of your comments in there because I thought they were clarifying, especially on the bullet points, because it did make it easier to follow.
Mhm.
So those kind of formatting we did on some of the key things that were important to us is how we do business.
Yeah.
But otherwise, some of the other stuff we didn't, but we could always look at it next year to make those changes too. We have
Mhm.
more time. Doug, did you have any comments? Sounds like you looked at that. Or Chris, do you have any comments?
I do not.
Doug, any thoughts?
Well, I tried to
Suggestion?
keep up, I took the day off to try to keep up with all the changes and,
It's
I
pretty.
admit I didn't get
it's
through
tough.
all of it.
Yeah.
But as it sits, I'm okay with it, what I've read, which is probably the first, all the way through about half of the red line, I was okay with that. So I'm guessing it's gonna be okay.
Can we look at page 33?
I'll pull that up.
Thanks, Emily.
So I think this was one of the areas that I pulled out here. The loan is not a revenue source according to the auditors. The loan is debt. Is this your comment, Emily?
Yeah, and the
Mhm.
table is formatted for the audit. And I've asked Andy Berg of Abdo to speak to this a little bit more during his presentation tomorrow.
Okay. Good. Cause that just doesn't gel with what the CPA is telling me.
Well, the 2023 actual audit is what we got from the auditor. Is that correct, Emily?
Yes.
The auditors can't change what we do, though. Their job is to look at what we did and comment on whether it was right or wrong.
Right.
And so you can't go to them for advice.
Yeah.
And a loan, anybody taking out a loan knows that it's a debt. I mean, that's a kind of a universal given, but when you get the proceeds, that is in addition to the revenue that's available to the organization. Whatever organization it is, whether it's government, nonprofit, or business, becomes a revenue. And so the loan is captured over on your balance sheet and monitored that way, and then your interest and the proceeds affect your operational statements. So anyway, I really would like to have that verified with our CPA, and I can certainly call him and run this by him, or Emily can, but I don't know that you've talked to him before. I've had several conversations with him. And
So are you suggesting that the grants and other aren't in here then, as the audited for 2023?
well, the grants I'm assuming are, because it's up at the
okay.
top. You see, this
But
is broken down into a very easily readable one-page format. Our revenues at the top, our expenditures are in the middle, and then we have loan proceeds at the bottom.
Right.
And revenues over expenditures, we're showing negative numbers for 3 years in a row here. That's significant numbers.
Well, that means revenues are over expenditures, which is the right way to be. So.
Are they represented as negatives in here and not positives?
The negative number means expenditures were higher than revenues. And that, assuming that revenues doesn't include loan proceeds, but when you factor in the loan, the change in the fund balance is positive.
Exactly. Which is what I put on my notes. So I'd like to have that checked before we make this official to the public. And I can make that call first thing in the morning. And
Okay,
this is
that's
our certified public accountant. He's got a CPA license and he's certified in government financials. So he's the guy we want to go to, just as he advised on the
So maybe you and Emily can both be on the call at the same
that's
time?
fine. Well, yeah, you're 2 hours behind, are you? Or was it one? 1 hour?
But I operate as if it's central time in business
Okay.
hours.
Okay. Well, I'll call him first thing in the morning and probably leave a message because I'm sure he won't be in when I call him, and we'll set it up for mid-morning. How does that sound? Okay.
I have a 10 a.m. Standing meeting.
Okay. Is it an hour, Emily?
Typically, yeah, 10 to 11.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's no other comments on this, then we'll move on. And then we'll review this again tomorrow, and if you have a chance to look and have some additional questions, hopefully we can minimize that, but deal with anything that has come up like we did tonight. So moving on then to administrator succession planning. Well, we were gonna try to pass out some materials, but there was nothing sent out, right? So I had sent out letters suggesting we how to prepare for this meeting, so.
I think we can talk about it though.
No, we can talk about it, yeah, I guess what the goal was, I thought for this meeting would be is to actually define the options that we want to look at in terms of what approaches we might want to take, and I think one of them that we talked about in the past is to have a assistant administrator, and I think Ellen has developed a position description for that assignment. So we have that document, and I think, so that's fairly well defined, although we need to review that. And then decide whether that's appropriate or whether we want to make so many changes to that particular doc. I think it's patterned after what Rice Creek Watershed District has. Is that correct, Mike?
Capital Region.
Oh, Capital Region, sorry, yeah, Capital Region. So that one's done. I think, the other thing is we need to talk about how we want to get together and look at the, pros and cons of these as we put them together. So let's go on to the next one. Next one is business manager. So maybe you want, that you've been championing that all along. Maybe you want to talk about some of the highlights on it?
Yeah, I do. I've mentioned this before, but basically, and Capital Region also has a business manager. And that person is responsible, as any business manager would be, responsible for the office, the running of the office. So anything to do with the office, that person is responsible, including taking care of moves, helping to line up the professionals that you need to look at properties and all of that, instead of having board members do it or the administrator. This position would fill all of those roles. So just think of it broadly as keeping the business running. And that's what this person would do. The other thing that I think is really important is it's overseeing the staff to make sure that they are productive every day and following the protocols and processes and the mission that the district has set out. The administrator is gone a lot because of meetings and meeting with partners and all kinds of reasons that that position is not here day in and day out. The office manager is, and so that responsibility for maintaining our bylaws, our process and procedures, books, and so on in all of the areas. So that if we had one person that was responsible for it exactly, which is mostly what happens here in a small organization, that person, if that person leaves, there goes all the knowledge, there goes all of that process and procedure knowledge. And so the office manager obviously would be very involved in that and would be able to fill in, but also train a new person coming in. That's very, very important. Even on the accounting side, there are things that we're discovering, not all the time, but frequently throughout the year, and doing the treasurer reviews where we can tweak something that would make the process better. And that type of stuff would be handled by, in all areas, by this individual. I would like to see this person not only have general business management experience, but also have accounting. So that we could take our accounting from spreadsheets format and then use the Sage system that our accounting team at Redpath have. And when they need the data, they can just come in and pull the data on the same platform and then produce the monthly reports. They would still do that. I think that check and balance is important. Capital Region started doing this a number of years ago. They're actually on a higher level system than what in Sage than what our Redpath folks have. And it's just a lot easier to keep track of all the different sources of money that we have in. It's very transparent. If the board wanted to have a report on all of our grants and what the status is, we would have that. It can also be designed so that it's keeping track of your projects. If we go to the phasing protocol, which we've talked about for several years now, we would know exactly where our projects are at, so we could get project reports. We could get a vendor listing and who are our big vendors. Obviously, EOR is probably the top of it, but who else? Where are we spending our money at the end of the year? So we get all those nice reports, and this position would be able to handle that. What we've worked with, and most watersheds do, is this combination that the person you hire as the administrator technically, or who oftentimes has that technical background, but not so much on the business management side. It happens, but not always. And when you're a busy district like we have been, with our projects and grants and all of those things that we do, there's not a lot of time left in the day for a single administrator position to handle all of those other necessities of running a business. So for those reasons, I think it's really smart of us to create that position. It's kind of a combination, I think, of what Beth was doing, with more heavy on the business side of things, not the communication as much. But overseeing that, just making sure that the business is running day in and day out the way that we as a board and our citizens, our taxpayers expect it to run. So I strongly advocate that we think seriously about that and hopefully do that. The next position we'll talk about when you're ready to do that, okay? Which would be the administrator.
Right, well, there's a couple questions here. One, we needed to get something written down on this.
Mhm.
For example, on the budget we have,
Mhm.
what parts of the budget would they be directly responsible for?
Well, I think putting the entire budget together would be the responsibility of this person and, obviously with input from staff. But ultimately it would be, especially the person, and not a general manager, but someone that also has that accounting background. And
Well,
so
okay,
keeping,
so that would be putting the budget together, which Emily is doing right now, helping
Yeah.
do that, basically, right?
well, they work together. I mean,
Right,
not one
right.
person's not gonna work on it. It's a team. It's
Right.
always a team effort. But the difference would be, as I suggested, that we get a Sage system in that we can work on, and that's where all our data is collected.
So
So,
let's take, like,
have
all
it
the
really-
admin costs,
Mhm.
all the admin costs, the office supplies, the telephone bills, the
Mhm.
rents. All that admin section of the budget would be directly under their control. In other words, if something goes wrong, they're responsible for
Yeah.
that area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So what about, but if you get into the program area, what would they have control in the program area directly?
Not from a technical side, they wouldn't have any control over that, but certainly from the personnel management side. You know, so if somebody has the day off or somebody or is sick or whatever, that individual is responsible to make sure whatever work needs to get done that day is done. So it's managing the office.
Okay, but let's just talk practically speaking. So Blair's off today,
Yeah.
Blaine's off today.
Yeah.
Yesterday, and so the program manager is now gonna step in and make sure that what Blaine had delegated to other people is gonna get done.
The program manager, you
Yeah,
mean the
I
office?
mean, the office manager.
Office manager, well, they would want to make sure that there's coverage. I mean, it is, who's gonna take the calls, do the calls go to voicemail, that kind of thing, setting up those protocols. And then
But right
monitoring.
now, the protocol is Blaine's got a message on his phone and he tells on that message who they should call if they need help.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is that when we get people responsible for things, areas that they had know nothing about,
I'm
we
not
have
talking-
problems.
No, you're not separating out the professional, technical side from the operational side of the business. So the structure for all of the employees to do their jobs comes from the phone systems, making sure that the phone system is working, making sure that the doors are open at 8 o'clock in the morning. If someone's not gonna be there and let's say he woke up with flu. So he was planning to be in, but he wasn't in. And so this person would make whatever arrangements needed to be made with consultation with Mike or whoever the technical person is.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
get understanding how this whole thing fits
Yeah.
together, because so then in the program area, they would have influence over the operational part of the program, area, the support system to all the program people to continue operating an efficient office system, basically.
Correct.
Okay, and the same would be for projects,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And if it
Okay.
involved budget, either adjustments or something new that had to be considered by the board. that person would be responsible for getting that to the administrator, who would then bring it to the board.
Doug and Chris, you guys jump in. I mean, this is an open meeting, so we're just trying to get a better understanding of what some of these concepts mean. And then we haven't talked about the pros and cons eventually, when we get them defined, then we need to have a separate meeting where we talk about the pros and cons. And, you know, what the risks are and so forth like that. So as I'm trying to think if there's any other questions.
What it
So-
does, I think the other thing that having a position like this, and I've talked to Mike many times about this, is that it relieves the administrator from having to do that day-to-day minutia that happens. And it's not always minutia either. I mean, it's, you know, finding a building, a location, working with those folks, that separate targeted once in a, you know, 20-year period or 50-year period kind of a project that's intensive, doesn't have to always fall on the administrator. It makes the administrator's time much, his schedule or her schedule, much more open to do the building of relationships with our partners, the cities and the community at large, and looking at new research or looking at new, you know, concepts that we might want to employ on the water quality side. So it gives it a lot more focus time for that very important part of the job.
Okay, so I think what's important here is to understand we're gonna add a hunk of salary to bring this person in. So then the question is, how much do they really contribute in being more efficient than we currently are? So that's a hypothetical question, but I think as we look at these positions and we add salaries, you gotta say, you know, you're not gonna add somebody for $90,000 that's gonna manage $60,000 necessarily, you know? So that's what we need to keep thinking about, I think. So as we move forward with these ideas, trying to bring that in would be helpful. I think.
Well, I don't think that's a problem. I mean,
Yeah.
we've lived with that, you know, the concept here for the last several years. And, you know, it had its pluses, but more minuses. So I think it's just a concept, I think is a good one. I think it's getting the right person in and having that person actually relieve some of the duties that are wrapped into the administrative position right now.
Yeah, and the main goal here is to try to relieve the administrator of some of his day-to-day responsibilities that are. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like you're
And-
talking, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I was just gonna say, but you also gain some things too. It's not just relieving the administrator, but it makes the access to our information, particularly the financial information, and the management of that information in-house, just much more readily available and transparent for us and the public. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Well, to me, it sounds like you're talking more about someone that's strong in operations with a business background. So whatever you call it, you can call it whatever you want, but to me, it makes more sense to talk about it in terms of operations with a strength in the, you know, the business or accounting or
Yes,
that
Yes.
side of things. 'Cause
yes,
then
it's
it
absolutely,
clearly decipher, you know,
yeah,
then there's no uncertainty about whether this person, you know, gets involved in the technical things. An operations person would just stay away from that stuff.
that's right. Absolutely.
So we're a relatively small organization, and so one of the questions you ask right now is that what's wrong with our accounting system today? I mean, we got a great budget, probably better budget than Washington County. What are we missing that we really need? That's one question, and same way in terms of operating the office, we obviously had some problems at that point in time.
Mhm.
But that was correct, that's been corrected by getting a different person in here, so, I'm just trying to understand how much value this person would really add compared to what we're getting today for the staff we have splitting up these responsibilities.
Well, I talked enough. I think I've laid out my point of view.
Okay,
So I think it's important that Mike talk about it. But one thing I will say is that, Red Path is working on a system that is 3 generations behind, the one that Capital Region ended up getting. And, you know, there's not the investment there to keep up with the accounting systems that are needed, so that troubles me. But there's just standard reports that you get out of an accounting system, a financial accounting system for business that we just don't have. And we shouldn't have to, you know, call an outside entity to get that type of information. And it's a single repository, so it's not on spreadsheets, you know, at this person's desk and that person's desk. I think we have a consolidated disk system now, or drive system for our computer, so that makes it better. We're all on a platform, a more sophisticated platform. So those are the major advantages that I see. But Mike, I'd really like you to talk about it from the administrator's point of view.
If I might, it sounds like this is a problem that the dismissed assistant administrator could take on right out of the chute, instead of us talking about it here.
What's that, Doug?
The software issue.
Assistant administrators aren't business people, though. They don't have business backgrounds. They have technical backgrounds.
But it's a problem within the organization that needs to be solved. It's not necessarily an accounting problem or a project problem. It's a problem the office needs to solve. And that's kind of what that role would be, I think. Figure out what the problems are, solve them.
Yeah, I think, you know, as we bring these forward, we have to get into the pros and cons, as you mentioned, and so when I ask some of those questions, it was kind of a jump ahead a little bit question that we have to deal with later on. And we'll have to do that with all 3 areas. Mike, do you have any other thoughts about how you see this working with you, or? But, you know, I'm just looking back, and every year our budget has changed a little bit. As we have new issues, we change the budget to accommodate that. Yes, there are times when we have to get some additional information, but then it doesn't take that much time to get it. As opposed to having somebody around here that's gonna do it for us. But again, that just. Any thoughts you have, just throw them out, because.
Well, I just think that there's, you know, we do have professional staff, so I think a lot of things that, you know, the day-to-day operation of the business is moving ahead. There's always, of course, new things and adjustments and, you know, new things that are staffed, and trying to create a framework where there are opportunities for growth with staff as well. So there's that need for mentoring and things like that. So I think the one thing that would be helpful in whatever role it is, you know, for the board to decide, is it more of a business operations person, or is it going to be somebody, you know, with more of a technical piece, background to kind of help with the design, engineer, and visioning, things like that, and what sort of role, and I know it was just this afternoon that we received a video from the Cultivate Advisors. They'll be here tomorrow night, more about what they can provide. And I think they might be able to help the board frame up some of these questions that we currently are pressed with, both in terms of, you know, the planning side, because the watershed management plan has a lot in there. And, you know, what is, because if we're going to take on a building of any kind, and at some point, one would think that we would want to vacate this because of the limitations. I mean, it's been workable, but it's far less than ideal for a lot of reasons. You know, again, you know, it's how much of the environmental watershed research piece do we want to start incorporating? Does the board want to pursue some discussion about maybe being a host for some of the lower St. Croix activity? And so while that's getting out there, but to do the building piece alone, just takes a ton of time. And that it would just not be feasible for, I think, any administrator talking to those that have gone through the building process. You need another person to basically kind of keep all the other things moving and be a contributor, so it's not just checking in and making sure the lights are on or the computers are working, but actually being a contributor, and being able to engage on the technical level as well, I think is kind of given the basis of their organization, would be important. So that would be the one challenge, I guess, on the business manager side is whether or not then, would you have somebody, they do exist, people that go out there and get a technical degree and then they go on for an MBA or something, or vice versa, they have a business degree and then they go for their master's and a technical degree or something. But you'd have to be pretty, decisive, and I think just looking at the work plan, but of course, the other always is the factor of how is this going to get funded or paid for? What sort of is there going to be, some further expectation? Because as we get further along and outside the realm of more projects, we get into operation and maintenance, and the current focus of both the shoreline work and the resiliency, then the land acquisition, whether easements or outright, those two focuses are going to take a lot of work just individually, and I think that we have the staff to proceed in those areas. But the other is just and I think that's really the workload analysis effort that we did before with Houston Engineering called for 11.25 FTE, and we've never been there. So we're now back to 9 with 2 seasonal employees. And the closest we had is when we had the NPCA person here for Jess for a year. But still, that was not a dedicated full-time employee, so.
Yeah. Well, I think, on this office thing, we've been struggling with this, but we had ISG and that worked fine for a while, and I've been through one with the church. And the architect took us through that and had other people for fundraising and so forth. So I think you could find somebody maybe that has that skill, but you're only gonna do that once in our lifetime, right? So I think it's better to subcontract that out to someone that does it on a regular basis, year after year after year. We just haven't sat down. I thought we had just agreed that we were gonna have a drawing made in your objectives. So we have to hire somebody to do that, and hopefully they can provide some leadership for us, and then just move right down the road on that whole thing without having to try to look at doing it internally with somebody that we would bring in specially, but.
It's managing the project. I think you're getting those two conflated a little bit. You've got your technical expertise and you've got your experience in that one particular thing, an architect firm, whoever it is. But finding that architect firm and bringing them in and talking with them and bringing them to the board, to do presentations and all of that, that's the administrator's job. And so how many hours out of his job or her job is taken when you do big projects, whether it's a building or any other big project? And so the business manager, operations manager, is the one that keeps that operational side of things moving forward. And that's the relief. I mean, just think of all the work we do with the board here. Wouldn't it be great to have a secretary or an administrative assistant that could do some of the work that we do and so on? Think of it that way, I think maybe is gonna help.
No, I think that you make
Yeah.
two very good points, okay, because I think somebody has to do that. My thought would be that board might do that, control that whole thing, but But because the board's gotta be heavily involved in that decision
Of course, the
anyway, and
board's
so
heavily involved, yeah.
they lead us and we okay what the plans
Yeah.
are, and then they do them. But again, that could be done by somebody inside, so these are the kinds of things you need to put in that position description.
Yeah, well, like I said, I've looked at many out there templates and, the big thing is to get a discussion with the board to see what the inputs are. I think, Chris's manager Lowe's comment about, focusing on the operational side, that's what I'm talking about, is the operational side of things. So put that into the description. So picking up these kind of inputs, that is gonna make it a lot easier to put that thing together and it's not gonna take long, so. So and the other thing, of course, is like I said, I've had some meetings with Mike on this concept, and I think you talked to, Capital Region, the outgoing, administrator, and how that position relieved him of time to do other things, so I think we've got a good foundation in what to talk. Did you ever get a job description from Capital Region for that position? Okay,
Yes.
For business manager?
No,
well,
Well, yeah.
well, they had the other
Yeah.
two, yes.
yeah, not the deputy administrator, the one who
Right.
took over for
Mhm.
Mark. I'm talking about the one that does the accounting and does the staff work and, negotiates for benefits, all of that time consuming stuff that's necessary for the operation of the office.
Yeah, so there's actually two positions that are involved with that, so I have the two, and that's where, I don't know, I was gonna see if Ellen was gonna be a part of this or not too, and that's kind of get some direction from the
Well, that's what I
board.
wrote down, rule of Ellen on this whole thing, I wrote that down as a
Yeah.
question mark.
Maybe
Or
share
make
those
a-
job descriptions from Capital Region
I gave them to her already,
to
so,
Ellen.
yes.
Okay,
So,
well,
Yeah, that would be, we
Share-
have to look at those
let's
because,
share it with us too.
but someone like Gallagher, whoever we picked from the survey, salary surveys, might have some input on this also.
I doubt it. No, I don't.
Because they're very good at looking at job responsibilities and how they get next and so forth, so.
Yeah, I sent you that email from Abdo. They do salary, I would trust Abdo, I think, better than Gallagher, going back to Gallagher.
right, so I do, yeah, and that's another topic, but,
Mhm.
we do have the other two in there, I think, two of them are. But the other two, I think, are worth having a further discussion with as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, if we can get those samples, job description.
Yeah,
copies
job
from-
description would be very
from
great,
Capital
because then we can
Region.
see what
Yeah.
functions are under there and how that relates to our
Yeah.
functions.
Yeah.
Because everybody's not the same,
Yeah.
and we're a small watershed district.
And I can send, yeah, I realize that, but there's a lot going on. I've got the sample that I've been working with. Again, just wanted to get board input, but I can send that out too. But I'd like to see what Capital Regions has, because it'll be more focused to our industry, the water industry.
Okay, that was good input, Manager Erickson, thank you. Doug, any other thoughts on this before we move on to the next one?
No,
Okay, so the next one we were gonna talk about is, the concept of trying to leverage the talent we have within the organization. And you had started some of this already with having some people assume some supervisory responsibilities, right? But I'm not sure they were actually doing performance appraisals and everything else, but that's something that we had talked about doing also as another option that we want, model that we want to look at.
Well, yes, the downside of that is that it just takes away from their day-to-day duties as well, so, and right now, we have a couple of staff, Emily and Blaine, are supporting in that realm. But then, so it's, do I take Blaine away from his high value skill of doing, land acquisition, landowner engagement and, and for Emily on her managing the budget, all of our grants, grant seeking, grant reporting, just a real high, again, a high level or high functioning individual that provides a lot of value to the district. So when you start, and certainly coaching and managing and doing all that is important as well. But they're just trade-offs. I just want to just say that, I guess, from that standpoint of, and we know what that loss would be because we already know the skill and the talents of those individuals.
Right. On the other hand, we've got some functions that have been increased in efficiency tremendously, so some skilled people have extra time on their hands.
Well, right, but there's
So-
no shortage of always things extra to do. Right, and we saw that, certainly like within the permitting program, that they've done a lot in that, and we can see it in the reporting and things like that. Well, the landowner engagement and such. So, but yeah, so it's, those are important.
Well, one of the things that we've talked about too is that, being a small organization, if people have skills that, that need to be developed, by giving them additional responsibility, more than just one functional area, allows them to better develop their expertise and skill set to move up in other organizations, having broader experience. If you're working a large organization, you're pretty much stuck in one aisle, and you can't get a lot of broad experience unless you leave that organization. Much like, what's his name, Mike? Yeah, has done. He's been jumping all over trying to pick up bits and experiences in permitting and AIS and so forth. So, and you gotta, if you can provide that opportunity to within your organization for people, even though it means doing less in their own area, but learning another area, that prepares them to move up within this organization, future responsibility, but also if they do decide to leave, they're much more marketable. And then on the other hand, they may not just leave for an extra $8,000 or something like that. We've got that model in our favor compared to, say, these large organizations that have tons of money that buy experts in a very narrow area, that stay experts in a very narrow area unless they leave and try to go somewhere else. And they have no experience to do that unless they have AIX experience. So that's the strength that we have as an organization that would be, I think, very valuable to our employees, especially if we hire good people that have the ability to learn new skill sets and develop themselves within the organization. When they leave, that's fine. Then we get somebody else and they go through the same model, but maybe they stay here more than 2 or 3 years. Maybe they're here for an extra 3 or 4 years. Learning that additional experience and still getting the work done for us. So that's one thing I think I seem attracted to that particular model.
Yeah, but I think the reason that they're good at what they do is because they love what they do. And, they've got that technical background and technical education for a reason. And any time that you take away from that by providing operational opportunities, I just don't think it might work out 1 in 100, but it's not a good fit. They're not gonna be happy doing that operational.
Well,
work.
then they don't do it. That's
Yeah,
fine. But
well-
hopefully we get people in here that have a skill set that want to move up, like Iverson was here.
Yeah.
He lasted like up 2 or 3
But
years.
you do that by broadening the focus of what they're doing in their technical expertise, and working with other districts or working, to enhance the program that we have. So to me, that's the way that is the logical growth for them, not saddling them with operational responsibilities that they've never done before. It's a grind. I mean, you've gotta like doing what you're doing, and I wouldn't wanna take a really good technical person and try to change them into a business manager or give them that kind of responsibilities.
I don't think that's a good fit either, but
Yeah.
if someone's good at something and they need experience in AIS or something, then
Oh, sure,
they
you can cross.
manage the AIS section for a
Sure,
couple of
yeah,
years.
you can cross
And then maybe
Do
they
that.
switch over to permitting and manage
Yeah.
permitting for a while.
Yeah.
So, but it takes a person that has that interest and also the capability.
Right.
And that's the kind of person you wanna keep around, and that kind of person that can move up in the organization, and eventually what we're talking about is finding replacement for our administrator.
That's
So-
exactly what we're talking about.
Right, so
That's
it's
why-
it's
that's
safer to do
why
it
the
inside
Deputy
than it is to
administrator.
bring somebody unknown in, so that's.
Yeah, but we've got the advantage of 3 to 4 years, you know, with Mike still around. Which was the way that Capital Region did it. It was a really well thought out and well laid out plan. So the deputy administrator came in, didn't have to worry about all that operational stuff, could focus exactly on what that job was and work with Mark for a few years. And then she had a year on her own with Mike being the support, or Mark, I mean, being the support before she actually took over. So it was a beautiful transition. And I think that's a good model. But they were two separate people. The office business manager had been there for a long time before the deputy administrator came along. I think also just for size, evaluation purposes, budget wise, their budget's not too much larger than ours, I don't think, Capital Region. I don't think they're much above 6 million. So.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But anyway.
Emily's familiar with that.
Mhm.
So I said there's not too much of an appetite for that particular model, or at least
What's that?
the one I'm just suggesting.
Yeah, bringing employees or moving employees into management, no. I don't like it. I don't think it's, like I said, you're gonna find that 1 in a million person or 1 in 100,000 person, you know, that can handle both of that, but mostly they wanna focus in on what they love and what they've spent their career, their adult life doing. So why burden them? Why take them away and have, you know, introduce some unhappiness into their day experience here? I just don't think we should do that. They're different skill sets.
Well, I mean, you know, we go through the work plan on an annual basis at a minimum, typically, you know, a couple times a year even, and at the staff level, but certainly the board sees it about, we send it out in November and then you approve it in December. So that gives an idea, but, you know, from the very beginning, when I also, within limits, I've said, well, staff, if there's a new thing that you want to spend some time on, and there's some hours that in our budget and work plan that you want to do, you know, so that's been a fairly common way to give staff opportunities to develop professionally in new areas, without making a wholesale change in their primary duties. And so, and to get work done, I always like to have a secondary person in most core functions.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you look at the history of this, I mean, let's take Emily, for example. You know, if she'd still be making copies at the copy machine, if you hadn't, you know, scanning materials into the computer, how she started. First day I met her, she was doing it. Over the years, now you've expanded her responsibilities and you've taken her skill set, and she's listening right now, but she's become very good in the areas that we've expanded her abilities in. So, I mean, it's possible, and you've done it with other people too, in terms of getting them to additional responsibilities. And if they don't have an interest in that, that's fine, you know, that means that they stay where they are, but
Right. Well, I
who
think,
would not pass up an opportunity to take a next step somewhere, you know? You gotta have a certain attitude, but. Well, I think still has some merit. It's not as easy to do all the time. As you say, you just can't pluck somebody out, but it's something we should think about. Doug, any thoughts on this idea of trying to develop people internally by giving them additional responsibilities?
Well, I guess I'm an outlier here because I don't think, but from my perspective, there are a lot of people who make a choice in colleges for a career, but then getting into that career, they realize there's a lot more out there than what they ever imagined. to have a person come in and expect them to stay in that little confine as an information module in an organization for the rest of their life, I think really discredits their capabilities. Every one of the 6 positions I opened up in the Twin Cities since moving back here from farming, believe it or not, has gone in a direction I didn't expect, with responsibilities I never thought I could handle. And yet none of them dealt directly with music, which was my degree. But you get into a role, you do something well, and all of a sudden you feel you have a penchant towards something that really rings your bell. And, it might be one of our staff persons that says, by golly, I think I could do that job pretty well. To make them stay in the position for which they were hired only, I think is a discredit to that person. An organization needs to evolve, and the people need to evolve and grow with it. And I think kind of that's what this, one of the positions we're talking about in this succession planning is one of those positions where the person has to grow and evolve and pick up more responsibility, learn more things, stretch, and sometimes stumble, but always keep moving forward. And it's not going to be in the confines of a particular discipline necessarily. The entrepreneur is different than the engineer. The teacher is different than the lawyer. And yet there is crossover. And I think we need to kind of have an eye open for that kind of skill in people. I think that's healthy for an organization to see that there's opportunities outside of just the prescribed role that they came into the organization as. That's my thinking.
And I think that's what we've been talking about, is giving people more stretch room
Right.
within their expertise. Or outside, something new and within that area that they love, the technical area.
Oh, but it's not always the same or easy or desirable to move from some of that into the management side, of
Mhm.
personnel. So that's,
Mhm.
something else that,
That's
and
a-
I've seen that, many times where people have opted, nope, I like what I'm doing and I just this is what I want to do.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have to be respectful, I
Right.
think, of the individual, but, the point is, and Doug made some really good points there, the, opportunity to grow has always been here. And that's stretching, into other areas, like you were talking about, of this discipline of clean water and environmental, sciences and so forth. So I think we've done a good job of that as a district and allowing people to stretch that way.
Okay.
Doug, go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing.
Chris left?
Yeah, Chris
Okay.
had a.
Oh, that's right, he said.
He's got his shorties and he had to fill in for the
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
So. Welcome to having your own business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm still struggling with how we're gonna move ahead on this, because obviously everybody has different opinions about, which is good. But what did Capital Region do to get to where they are? Did they have somebody come in to lead this idea or suggest things or?
That I don't know, but I did look, so they have a roughly a $10 million levy and,
Oh, they do?
yeah, in
Okay.
budget, so, so they're operating in that.
What's your budget above the levy? Is it not all levy?
Yeah,
We have $20 million in grants. I'm just kidding. That's what you want, right?
they have estimated in governmental.
Well,
It's a
no,
couple
I
hundred
want-
thousand.
I want 2 million. That's our budget.
For the, intergovernmental, it just says, so I presume either grants or from other partners, is $243,000.
How much?
243,000.
Well, they do all the water quality work for the cities. The capital region area, so some part of St. Paul, probably the government centers,
Mhm.
but capital. So, yeah, I forgot about that. They do, that's why they have that big, lab on the side of their new building.
So
Yeah.
they're at 0.25% then,
Mhm.
instead of, as far as their grants to their total budget.
Yeah, potentially, looks like they have some debt surface, their total, things, so yeah, it's roughly 12 million in expenditures, so they must be operating under some debt as well.
Mhm.
That's, that alone is 1.1. So, anyway, so, I do think though that this cultivate advisors that the board will need to introduce tomorrow, I think can help with some of this, because it's really gonna be some of the, if you go and look at the video that was posted, they sent over today, and thank you, Emily, for getting it posted to the board packet. You know, provides some of that, well, they just have experience in guiding organizations, so, that's kind of their focus. And so while a lot of it's gonna be in the business, but they do again have nonprofit and governmental arm that, you know, that's what he'll speak to, but, cause it's just asking some of the right questions, so. There's a lot of ideas and thoughts here, but I think it is kind of difficult to, peel it all back and try to figure out what. And that's why maybe a little bit of my stronger interest in the strategic planning part is what do we think the organization will be doing or looking like in 45 years? And then you start working toward that skill set to help the organization in that timeframe. Because that person's gonna be a lot different than me, sure. I'm sure that.
Well, we don't have to wait 45 years, just look at our 10-year plan.
No, I said
Shifting
four
already
to
to
four to five,
Right.
you know, so that, yeah.
So, you know, the next administrator we have will have a different background than you, brought you in for ag a lot, although the ag really hasn't developed the way we wanted it to. But because it's an uphill battle, we're making progress, that's for sure. But
Yeah, well, there's two things. One is the scale issue. Turns out our projects are a bigger contributing, thing that we've been identifying, in terms of water quality. And Aiden's done a fantastic job actually with the farmer-led council.
that's what I'm saying, we've got a base set in
Yeah.
place.
So,
So we've made a lot of good progress, but
right. So,
But it took that long because Mike was the single person doing that, and it takes time
Well,
to build
no,
those kind of new
we
programs.
focused on other things, we focused on the 80-20 rule, so that's where we.
Well, there's no bigger contributor than agricultural, yeah.
mhm.
So it was a timing thing too. It's a matter of your point of view, I think. It's where you start from and,
Well, but
where
that-
you're at right now and that's why we have discussions.
But the diagnostic monitoring was telling us it was the farm off of 250th and Stream Moody and all these other things.
Right.
Those are the things that, again, the 80-20 would told us where to go.
Right. So
In this-
there are many of those left out there? I don't know.
Well, that there are monitoring data, says not too much, but, so.
That was our goal, though.
Mhm.
Our goal was to target those top producing sites,
Yeah.
like pollution producing sites,
Mhm.
to take care of that so that we could show this tremendous improvement
Mhm.
early so that taxpayers would want to keep continuing to contribute
Mhm.
their tax dollars, and that was successful. But that doesn't mean there's not tier 2 and tier 3 projects. We started on the tier 1 projects.
Mhm.
So now we've got the other stuff that we can deal with.
Right, and that's in part the shoreline and all the fertilizer that's going in and feeding.
And suspended solid
the lake
loading
plants, yeah.
and legacy loading and so forth. Yeah, there's lots of stuff to do. Protection, Greenway corridor, to me, is the biggest thing. And underneath that umbrella, of course, is the floodplain resiliency work that we're doing. But we've got to start moving quickly on identifying those properties that we need to protect. And I thought that was what the inventory, what we're getting off topic here, but, you know, I'll bring that up tomorrow, but never mind.
Well, we do have a special meeting set now for that.
Yeah.
May 2nd.
Yeah.
Maybe
So,
Yeah,
fifth, right, or
Second.
second, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see what they have to say of tomorrow. But, I think one thing would be helpful, since we seem to have learned or formed some opinions from Capital Region. How many other districts have more than 10, more employees than the administrator can handle directly? Span of control when it's over 6 or 5. So we should maybe look at a couple other organizations where they have more than 6 employees, and how the administrator is handling that, or how the organization or how the board has decided to handle it. It'd be good to get other than just one view on this. I'm talking about benchmarking now again, Mike. We talk about that for our staff to do, but we should follow it ourselves. So I don't know whether you could have staff do that quickly, but just, you know, anybody that's got a lot of employees, you know, he or she's not gonna be managing 15 employees.
look up their annual reports.
Yeah,
I should have it all right there.
organization chart.
Yeah.
Well, you can tell by the position description which ones are
Right.
typically.
So that would be helpful, I think, and then somewhere along the line, though, we're gonna have to help somebody maybe facilitate this, but we'll see. And I can't believe that some of these salary people organizations can't do that for us, but maybe I'm wrong. You can hire a consultant to come in and do that, but that gets to be really expensive, so
I don't think we need it.
I don't think we do either.
No, I think it's just a commitment to a direction and we've gotta be in alignment with that.
Okay. So we'll have our meeting tomorrow. We'll listen to Cultivate Advisors. I sent out the job descriptions to the board. We'll look at these other watershed districts that have more than 6 employees. Do we want to have 2 managers meet for discussion about after tomorrow, kind of like what would potentially be some next steps going into the budget cycle?
Going into the budget cycle,
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned there was some challenges we have to face this year that are a little different. Is that what you meant, to get that out in the open, or just?
Well, no, that's gonna be different, but no, just in terms of like, but yeah, you know, just in preparation for, you know, just the funding side for staff, and then what's the, you know, proposed core work area and that the person would be doing. So I think it's just also gonna be helpful to inform staff, you know, what the board is thinking in that. Let's see if there's any other adjustments, but and also for me to get feedback from them about some of these different models, or where they feel that they could pick up, you know, in certain areas, or if there's certain staff that want to, you know, maintain some roles in supervisory, the management side, or so some of those discussions, you know, this would be fairly new, given, you know, Beth's departures is so recent. So,
No, I think if the people that have an appetite to do that, we should try to allow them, and they have the capability.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I had to do a force mute someone in the waiting room. Would you please unmute the Owl computer? Are you able to find the unmute button? Is there a different computer that's, running the OWL?
Ask them.
Okay, I can hear you now. Thank you.
All right. So. Any additional next steps or?
No, I'm gonna talk to Chuck about some things too, if I can get a hold of him today,
Okay,
but I think those suggestions you made were good. I think if we look at, if we see that a lot of organizations have gone to this business manager concept, then it's a no-brainer for us, I mean, right? Dr. Manager Anderson, so, and I think the thing that I'm talking about is a no-brainer too, if people have an interest in doing that, you wanna accommodate them as much as you can.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, the genesis of this concept was to free up administrative time so that the mendacity of, the mundane, I should say, of the day-to-day business world, they don't get so tied up in that, so that that frees up whatever it is, 30%, 40% of their times, of course, that varies, but it just makes some sense to get the mundane out of the way and make sure that that's handled. And you're confident that that person can handle it and keep everything running on that end, and then, spend time moving the district, the staff forward. Yeah, okay.
okay, I don't think we're gonna accomplish anything else tonight.
No, I don't think so.
We've got a couple of action steps for your place, so that'll help us move along a little bit. And we've got the meeting tomorrow night, we'll see what they can do for us.
And, I'm gonna call Mark Gibbs from Red Path, our CPA, and set up a telephone call for Emily and I to review how to handle that, loan revenue on the financials.
Yeah, so what's wrong with how we're handling it now? It's not in the total, it's in the bottom as an after the fact, right?
Yeah,
And I think the point that the public can see how we're using loans to leverage the business, so. But we don't want to stick that money in a footnote and have it disappear,
it's not gonna go out there,
Okay.
no.
right?
It's not at all going to be in a footnote. It's how to represent it properly from an accounting standpoint.
Okay,
Abdo, again, are the auditors, they're not supposed to give us advice.
like moving 400,000 into the general fund.
Well, that didn't come from them, it came from the CPA, so the
That's it.
CPA is who, yeah, Red Path. Like I said,
Good.
Mark, he signs our document our cover letter every month.
Okay, is there any other topics we want to talk about tonight that's related to the agenda? Doug, do you have any other thoughts before we break up?
No, this covers the agenda.
Okay. All right, then, if you okay, any other thoughts?
yeah, no, just housekeeping, looking to have a special meeting on May 2nd and of the board. We said 3:30, but if we could start at 3, if everyone could check their calendars, we'll get back to us tomorrow, that'd be great. Just, well, Adam has something, and then I had a event I was planning to attend after work, and so if we could start at 3 o'clock, that'd be
On May 3rd,
second. I
May
believe.
2nd, I think.
Yeah, look, it's just the date.
Okay,
I'm open on May 2nd.
I think I am too.
At 3 o'clock, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll let you know for sure if I want to get back.
All right,
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Doug?
Aye.
Thank you. I'll do a roll call vote. Manager Anderson?
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz? Aye. Manager Taves?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Two, you said two?